Alright, so here we go. Welcome to Mr. Nelson's YouTube video over Pythagorean theorem. Alright, so what we've got here is we're going to take some notes over Pythagorean theorem in our notebook. So, here is your very first slide. As you can see at the very top, it says start taking notes. Let's change my color a little. Start taking notes. Okay? So here we're going to take notes over Pythagorean theorem. What is Pythagorean theorem in symbol form? Well, that is given to you right here. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay. In class we went over the proof for this, which just means a nice way of showing how this theorem actually works. Okay. And then it asks, which of these variables represents the hypotenuse? Remember, we've got a triangle, and it's a right triangle. Here's a leg. Here's a leg. Here's the hypotenuse. It's the longest side across from the right angle. Okay? It's the longest side across from the right. So the longest side across from the right angle. Alright. Once you have figured out which is C, because C is the hypotenuse, does it matter which leg is A and which leg is B? No, it doesn't. This could be A, this could be B, or you could flip-flop them. It doesn't matter as long as you stay consistent. Okay? Alright, let's look at the next set of notes. So, take notes again. As you can see here, it says take notes. Okay, so these are the steps to solve for a missing side of a right triangle using that theorem. Okay, so first you have to write the formula. Okay, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Right? Now I'm going to substitute what I know. If I know one of the legs, I'm going to plug it in. If I know the hypotenuse, I'm going to plug it in. These are the side lengths. So I plug in the side length for A, plug in the side length for C, and then I have to find the B, right? Solve the equation for the missing variable, right? Remember, you box what you don't know, and then you solve using that two-step equation stuff, okay? Alright. Here is the first example, okay? So we've got a right triangle, and it's got the side length of 8 and 15. Right? So first I write my formula, because that's step one. Okay? Remember, we're taking notes over this. Make sure this example is in your notes. And we're trying to find the x. Okay? We look and we see, well, that side is across from my 90 degrees. So that makes it my hypotenuse. Right? And here's a leg. And here's a leg. Well, I'm going to name this leg A, and this leg B. Okay, so now I plug in what I know. Which number goes where, right? Well, I'm not sure. You need to identify the hypotenuse. We identified the hypotenuse. It's across from my right angle. It's the longest side in my triangle. Okay, so we identified the hypotenuse. It's the opposite of the right angle, like I said. The hypotenuse is always going to be C in your formula, so my hypotenuse is C. So I'm going to plug in, well, we could plug in x, or you could keep it C, okay? So it's going to be x squared if you want to plug in x, okay? Since we do not know the value of C, it says C in the formula. Does it matter whether we use A equals 8 or 15? No, because when we go back, we know that we already had stated that here. Once we figure out C, does it matter which leg is A and which is B? No. Okay? Alright, so here it doesn't matter. So I labeled it A is the 8 and B is the 15. So now on the next slide you'll see how to do step 3. Okay? So let's look at that. So this is the same exact example, example number 1, same value, same everything, except I've written the formula, I've substituted my known values. I said that this one was going to be A, and this one was going to be B, okay? I substituted my known values, and then I have to solve for the missing variable. Well, it's a two-step equation. I have to solve first. I've got to do the 8 squared and 15 squared, right? So we are not done yet, right? because we still have to solve. We found that c squared, right, equals 289. Not just plain c, right? See how it has that little square there? Well, that little square means c squared, just like how when it was 8 squared, it wasn't just 8, it was 8 squared, which is that 64, which is what we put down here. So in order to get rid of that square, okay, we've got to take what is called the square root. Okay, and that's what's going on right here. So if I take the square root of one side to get c, just c all by itself, I have to do it to the other, just like all the other things. When we were doing it to one side of the equal sign, we have to do it to the other. So what I did is I did the square root on both sides. Okay, and you can see that there. Took the square root of c squared and 289. Well, the square root of 289 ends up being, when I plug it in my calculator, it ends up being 17. So 17 times 17 equals that 289. Okay? But in the end, we found our missing side. In the end, we found our missing side is 17. Okay? So let's move on. Oh, one too many. So here's one that you can try by yourself. I set it up for you. Okay? All you have to do is find x. Okay? I set it up for you. I said, here's A. I said, here's B. Make sure you put these in your notes, okay? All you have to do is basically finish. I did most of it for you. I squared A, I squared B. I said 25 plus 144 equals 169. And then I said, well, I need to find x by itself, so I have to take the square root. And if I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other. All you have to do is finish what I started, okay? Finish what I started and find the answer. Make sure you have it in your notes. If you want to write down all the steps for this one, that's fine too. If you want to write down all the steps and include this, that is actually what you should have in your notes, okay? Because this is a second example for you to have in your notes, okay? All right, so example number 2. Have to follow our steps. We've got step 1, write the formula. We wrote the formula. Step 2, substitute the known values, okay? In this one, my longest side across from my 90 degree, right? Across from my 90 degree is that 14. So that 14 is my C, so I have to plug it in where C's at, okay? So that's what I did here when I have to substitute my known values. Substitute known values, right? Okay, so I've got A or B. Which do you want it to be? Well, I made it B. It could be A if you wanted it to be. Remember, those are interchangeable. If I wanted it to be A or B, the big thing is finding which one your hypotenuse is. Once you find the hypotenuse, you can plug these sides in either at A or B. I plugged it in for B. Okay? So this time we were given the hypotenuse, right? And we were given a leg or one of the other sides. Does it matter whether we use A equals 6 or B equals 6? No. Remember, it doesn't matter if we use A or B, okay? What we did is we used B, okay? Again, make sure you have all these notes in your notes, okay? This is example 2. This is the example of how to find it given the hypotenuse. That makes it different from those first 2 examples, okay? The hypotenuse and a side. Okay, so let's look and see what we get for an answer on the next slide. Same exact values, again, hypotenuse, leg, right? Step 1, we wrote the formula. Step 2, we substituted what we knew. And now we have to solve for the missing variable, right? Well, I square the 6, I square the 14, that gets me that 36 and 196, right? And remember, we're trying to get A all by itself, so I'm going to box A squared. To get rid of plus 36, I have to subtract 36, because if I do it to one side, I have to, that's right, do it to the other. That gives me A squared equals 160. In order to get rid of that little square, what do I have to do? Yes, I have to take the square root, which is what happened right here. And if I do it to one side, I have to, that's right, do it to the other. So in the end, what you get for an answer is 12.64911. Okay, so the square root of 160 is about 12.65. Okay, when I rounded it to the nearest hundredths place. So if you see here, we solved. Can we just add the two numbers and do the square root? No, they are not on the same side of the equal sign, so I have to do that little two-step equation part, okay? Where we subtract the 36. Alright, let's look at the next one. What is the difference between the two examples? Kinda hinted at it. Remember, both have you squaring the given sides, right? We squared the given sides in both of our equations. Okay? Both have you using the square root at the end, right? The only difference is in the middle. Example 1 has you adding the numbers on the same side of the equal sign. Example 2 has you subtracting the smaller from the larger, right? Basically, that one step right here, that minus 36 on both sides, the reason is because we knew the hypotenuse and we knew one of the sides. We had it on the opposite side of the equal sign, okay? The other side of the equal sign. All right. What does this mean? When you have two sides of a right triangle, you can find the third using this theorem. Okay? Remember, it has to be a right triangle. A right triangle has that nice little symbol in the corner. The hypotenuse is always across from that right angle. Okay? So you square both of the measurements you have, add or subtract the two numbers depending on whether or not you have the hypotenuse. Subtract if you have it. And if you don't, find the square root of the result and you have the missing side. So basically, follow the steps that we have here. Step 1, write the formula. Step 2, substitute known values for variables. Step 3, solve the equation for the missing variable. If it's a two-step, use those two steps like what we did here. The one step, we squared everything, added it together, and then that square root. Okay? And then when we don't have the leg and we have the hypotenuse and a leg, we substitute what we know. Substitute what we know. And then do that two-step equation. Subtract the 36 from both sides to where we have a squared equals 160. We're trying to get to where it's a variable squared equals a number to where we can take the square root of both sides. Okay? Alright, so that half sheet of paper that you have in class today, one side has the bell work on it, the other side is going to have these 4 questions, okay? So you have this right triangle, solve for the missing side, round your answer to the nearest hundredths, if necessary. If necessary, okay? If necessary. Okay? Use your formula, step 1, step 2, step 3, right? Same for this one. This is the second one of that 4 quadrant that you can do on the back of that half a sheet of paper. Solve for x. Round your answer to the nearest hundredth, if necessary. If necessary. And this is number 3. Find the missing side, right? Round your answer to the nearest hundredth, if necessary. If necessary. And number 4. Here's your triangle. Here's your missing side. Round your answer to the nearest hundredth, if necessary. If necessary. Okay? That is the end. Here is your first question. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. And number 4. Okay? 4 questions, 4 quadrants for you to do. When you finish one, if you want to get it checked by me, you can come get it checked by me. I can tell you if you're doing it right. That way you can move on to the other 3 questions. Okay? If you get stuck, remember, ask me questions, okay? Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Okay? That concludes your notes. Make sure that you bring me your half of sheet of paper with your name on it. All right.